Looking to branch out and learn new and exciting ways to build the ultimate home base in Enshrouded? Look no further than here. Welcome, Flameborn. This is Eerie Knight of the Pseudoposse, and in this video, I'll go over my 30+ most useful advanced building tips, while also providing a tutorial on how to build a treehouse. These tips will be in the order in which we use them for our build, and thus are not ordered by rank of complexity or usefulness. Feel free to pick and choose the elements you like, whether you want to do a treehouse yourself or something entirely different. Most tips will be suitable for all builds, though there are a couple treehouse specific ones. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's embark on our journey. And yes, there will be some bad tree puns. Sorry, not sorry. If you don't like it, then make like a tree and leave. For our build, we're going to use the following block materials: the roughly cut stone block, the metal block, the refined wood block, the half-timbered, the fired brick block, the tarred shingle roof, the copper block, the bone block, the shroudwood block, the weathered stone, and the luminescent block. That is indeed a lot of blocks, and they'll be used in drastically different quantities within this particular build. Now, normally in build guides that I've done in other games, I don't cover how to actually get the materials, but since the game is still quite new, some people may not have gained the ability to craft these blocks quite yet, and may not know how. So our first tip will be how to access all of these blocks. Now, most of these are easily obtainable by placing the appropriate material in your inventory. Metal blocks require metal plates, which is produced through the forge. Fired brick blocks require fired bricks, which are produced in the kiln. Tarred shingles require tar, which is produced by the charcoal kiln. Copper blocks require copper bars, which is produced by the smelter. Shroud wood requires, well, shroud wood from any tree in the shroud. And the luminescent block requires luminescent growth, which can be found in many caves in Revelwood. Or if you want access to it sooner, inside a cave to the west of Braylon Bridge. Check out our cave build video for more specifics on how to find that material early on. However, the remaining blocks are special and need to be found in order to unlock them. To find the roughly cut stone block, do the A Story of Rot quest in Netherton. Note my location on the map. Make your way up this ruined building, and up at the top is a crate containing this block material. The bone block can be found within a tomb north of Braylon Bridge and the first ancient spire. Just watch out for the spiders. Half-timbered blocks are found in Revelwood in the town of Diadwin, inside a chest. And last but not least, the weathered stone block can be found while doing the Rumble in the Catacombs quest in the Bramble Spine Boneyard. Locate the wooden door a fair distance inside that requires a lockpick, and instead beat it down. Inside is a chest and the block. Now time to pick our location for the treehouse. I would highly recommend going anywhere around Revelwood area, as the trees are much taller here than in the earlier region. I'll actually be settling near Diadwin by the cliffs, as it has some nice clay and copper deposits down below, perfectly within glide range. I'm initially going to place my altar around here, as there are several nice large trees within this immediate area, with several more off in the distance that we can reach after we upgrade our altar later on. Our second tip is quite useful for repositioning your altar to a different location otherwise not initially placeable. For this particular instance, I want my altar to be within my treehouse above the ground. Problem is, you can't place your altar like that without a bit of work. It requires having an altar down, as we just did. Next, build a temporary structure up to that point in which you want to build your actual altar. Craft a new altar and destroy the first one. Place your new altar on top of your temporary platform. It should be noted, if placing in the air, the altar needs to be placed directly on top of blocks such that the bottom surface is completely covered. You can later destroy the block underneath, so don't worry about how it looks now. You could also use this trick to put your altar on a second, third, or X number of floor of a traditional house after you start building it. It will allow you to build higher, as increasing the height of the altar itself will push the boundaries higher in the air. One thing I immediately noticed upon falling off my stairs as I built my temporary structure is that trees have a very wide collider. As you can see here, I am trying to walk towards the tree but cannot get any closer. I suspect the collider is cylindrical and is at least the width of the base of the tree. While this is not a tip in of itself, it will present some difficulties as we build, and there will be some useful tips resulting from this caveat, but we'll cross that bridge later. On to the next tip. While I ultimately did not use this particular feature in my final version of the build, as my overall vision changed over the course of construction, it is something I've used in the past. The game does come with some useful prefab blueprints for quick construction, But one thing it is missing amongst all the stair pieces is an inside corner stair section, which is absolutely criminal. Fortunately, it is quite easy to do. Place at least 2 stair sections at right angles to each other and ensure they are properly aligned. Next, extend each step toward where the corner would be in the center, and voila, a beautiful corner staircase. My original intent here was to create an attractive decorative element for my altar by putting it in the center of some corner staircases, which is a great way to accentuate your altar, but as you'll see later on, it just gets in the way. Tip number 3. Another great reason to get your hands on copper bars is that it allows you to craft a grappling hook anchor point from the blacksmith, which can provide the perfect means of ingress into our treehouse. We can even go all Tarzan and get a swinging hook to swing from tree to tree. I would highly recommend you test out the hook placement before positioning it in your build, as you want to be sure we can reach it from the ground. There, it needs to be around here-ish, which places it well below the level of my altar, which was intended to be the low level of my treehouse. Change of plans. Instead, I'm going to make a little simple entry for us to enter via the hook, and then climb up to our house. I'll start with placing some refined wood below the anchor point height, connecting to the tree. From the ground, I'm going to make some slight adjustments to the length of the platform so we can get better line of sight to the hook. I'm going to remove all the temporary staircases for placing the altar, and readjust the shape of the platform to better wrap around the tree. Next, I'll construct a little copper railing to attach my anchor point around the height of the previous grappling hook test. Though it goes against my intuition, the anchor doesn't actually drop you below as you hook up. Rather, you go through it and land above it. Interesting. I never really paid attention to that while using these out in the world, but now I am. Instead, I'm going to convert the support I made for my anchor into a landing platform by placing some brick around it to widen the area, giving myself some more room. Due to the wonkiness of the tree collider, sometimes removing blocks close to the tree can be quite difficult. If it is outside of your undo action queue, which holds up to 5 actions, you'll need to remove it by other means. Unfortunately, right-clicking to remove the entire thing doesn't always work. So tip number 4, when removing blocks near a tree, sometimes the easiest way to remove it is by going underneath and right-clicking block by block using the single wall block shape. It can be a bit tedious, but it is a pretty reliable way of getting around the tree collider. Straight edges can be quite boring. Still consider doing tip number 5 to give your floor plan some more definition. Here I am going row by row and increasing the length by 1 to give an angularity to both my floor and the resulting wall, which as you see gives a really nice texture effect, giving your living space more detail. I use this same exact technique later on when constructing a balcony to my main treehouse structure to give the balcony a non-rectangular shape. Because our grappling hook landing platform is above the wood floor, we'll need some stairs connecting both surfaces. We aren't going to jump around like heathens, so since we are butting up against the angular wall, we'll need to create a curved staircase of sorts, which is pretty easy and will be tip number 6. I've just about finished this one, so you can see what the end product looks like, but I'll showcase how to build on the other side. Start with your initial step and from your wall, build out the next step and remove the attachment to the wall when complete. Next 2 steps down, we're going to do the same thing but extend it to 1 block further on the opposing side and remove an additional block on the wall side and give it a tapered look. Then I'll make the bottom stairs wrap around a bit, and voila, a nice small little curved staircase. The half-timbered block is a great medieval style texture, but did you know if you use just a single column, it gives a real Gothic style aesthetic. It is mostly black, and the top of the column has a very pronounced look, giving it a really cool embellishment that will be perfect to form some angular windows. Of course, you could also do it along a flat wall as well. You don't always have to use the window frames for your hole in the wall. These will provide a great light, still count as being sheltered, and look dang cool. We can, however, ramp it up a notch. Tip number 8. Use these timbered blocks to make decorative archways. The main idea here is to use a series of half-timbered single wall blocks to form mostly single block width sections that form a decorative arch. That way we retain the Gothic look, and we can even intermix some of the timbered look inside for a little splash of color. You can use any number of patterns, but in general, just create a series of different sized rectangles and diagonally placed blocks to form whatever pattern you prefer. The final look of the archway is shown right here here to give you a general idea of what you can create for yourselves. It is quite easy to do, and with a little effort will look really great. Tip number 9. Scaffolds can be a great way to build higher. I still make liberal use of temporary platforms and stairs, but the ladder scaffolds in particular provide a great way to climb high in very small spaces. You can stack them on top of each other and align the ladders so you can seamlessly climb all the way to the top, wherever possible. Adding little details to your build will make it look much better. Whether that is using a different material or making a flat surface non-flat is a great easy way to add some general low effort aesthetic. Here I am doing both. I'm incorporating the metal blocks to add some different texture amongst all the wood, plus I'm adding some metal beams across the surface of my wall for a bit more contour. On the inside, I'm also adding some molding along the interior where the roof meets the wall, and some additional metal beams on the bottom just below the windows. And back outside, I'm constructing a window covering with some shroud wood to both break up the flat surface and introduce a different material. Careful not to overdo it, but a little bit of embellishment goes a long way. For all the windows of my treehouse entrance, I'm going to provide this level of detail. You may be wondering, given the arch we have out front, how the hell am I going to make a roof for this complex shape? Not to worry, I've got a plan. I'll start out making a traditional like roof, use the 2-meter slope roof shape, fill in some gaps with the fired brick shapes, cover a section with some flat roof. I will also use the outer roof corner and connect 2 of those in the center to roughly match the slope of our archway. I'll fill in the gap in the front with the stepped wall and some flat wall to fill in the gaps. Now here's where the traditional roofing part ends and the fun begins. Instead of using more flat or sloped roofing pieces to directly connect the existing roof to the arch, I am going to make a series of beams connecting the two. It will not completely enclose the space, but I want to have some natural light come into my treehouse entryway while also giving it a nice aesthetic look that also has the appearance of providing structural integrity. Stability doesn't really exist in Enshrouded, but the engineer in me needs to have it in some form to satiate my OCD. Back to my wonky tree collider, it provides some extra challenges. We already covered how difficult it can be to remove blocks by the tree, but it is also difficult to place blocks. Sometimes it is easy, like here, where I can build single wall blocks right by the tree. However, directly on the other side of the tree, I cannot for the life of me get it any closer to the tree with my support beams. Recall I said I need structural supports for my sanity? Well, I want to place beams going from the tree underneath my entrance, but it is proving quite difficult. There is, however, a solution, and tip number 12. Placing single blocks can be difficult, but if you use blueprints, you can get those going through the tree. Just remember, if you place it and want to remove it later, it will be a pain. Our next step is, well, steps. I'm going to do more than a single treehouse structure. Surprise! For those longtime viewers out there, you probably rolled your eyes in disbelief when I said simple little entryway before. Kudos to those that did. Let me know in the comments if you managed a 180 on your eyeballs. Anyways, stairs. I'm now envisioning a kind of Ewok village type of thing with stairs connecting tree to tree with different structures. For our first inter-tree pathway, I'll start with a regular old flat path. Using roughly cut stone, I'll go 1 block up and over from the path and lay down a single row of blocks, and above that, some shroud wood blocks. This railing is 3 blocks high above the path, completely protecting you from falling. A 2-block high railing won't prevent you from running over it. And tip number 14. We are going to use the luminescent block as the legs for our railing, as it will double serve as lighting at night when walking along the stairs. Mass-producing candles might be a bit tricky early on, so this is a great way to get a bunch of free light. So now we have a problem. In an ideal world, I'd be able to wrap the stairs around the tree directly, connected. Except, this world isn't ideal, and the tree collider will shove us off our path if too close to the tree. So we need to go wider around. We'll use a similar trick like we did with the curved staircase. To make an angled staircase, shift each subsequent step 1 over. The railings for this section is a bit trickier, but you'll start with putting down the roughly cut stone or whatever material of your choice down along the stair edges. Then I'll place some shroud wood 2 blocks high and delete the bottom one. The railing here is only 2 blocks high, so you can fall over. If you do want it 3 high, you'll need to do a similar thing with the roughly cut stone block at the bottom to raise it up 1 block higher so the shroud wood can also be 1 block higher. This next one is more of a warning than a tip, but due to how I changed my building plans a few times up to this point, my level 2 flame altar is in the wrong position. So, like we did previously, I'll need to move it over. Be very careful when doing this, especially after building so long. If you were to log out before placing down a new altar, you will lose everything. so make sure you get it down as quickly as possible. Just to reiterate, when putting down an altar disconnected from the ground, it needs a floor underneath, so make it wider than you need and you can cut away the excess stuff later. When making a wraparound walkway, like this here, an important tip to keep in mind is if you make the angled portion as wide as the straight section, you'll end up with a very narrow walkway along the angled span. What you want to do instead is make it 1 block wider than the straight section to make it roughly the same distance across from railing to railing. Our next task is to work on the altar area itself, a long time coming. First, we're going to cut away all the temporary structure we used to place it, and I'll lay down some refined wood in its place. I think having a circular shaped floor would be pretty sweet for our altar floor, but visualizing a discrete circle with a diameter of X number of blocks would be tricky to visualize, to build a circle with no reference. To give myself some visual aid, I wrote a little Python script that upon specifying a diameter of a circle, it will visualize for me in a grid what positions the blocks need to be placed. Now, I wouldn't expect all of you to write code to play a video game, so tip number 17. To create a circular shaped floor, reference this document here. Link to this document in the description below. It contains a variety of circles with different diameters and their block placements. Consult this chart for any circular floor, wall, arch, whatever you want to build, and don't drive yourself nuts trying to wing it. Upon completing the floor, time to build up our walls. Like we did with the entrance, I will make the angled wall section a window, though this time it will be 2 blocks wide. And as highlighted previously, I'll use a different material to make my windows pop out more. And because the tree collider clips through this section of our altar wall, I'll need to use the single wall block blueprint to reliably place the window there for the wooden portion of my wall. Before I continue onward, I'm going to complete the path section from the entry to our little altar shrine. Nothing new here, just constructing the path as I have done previously. What is new is tip number 18. I want to create an angled support beam that seamlessly blends into our angled windows, which will provide fake support for our roof. In the real world, roofs don't stand up by magic, so let's do some cool structural supports. What we want to do is ultimately get to this point to finish our windows. All we need to do is to place some blocks at a right angle, remove, and repeat. Then place a block above both of these and delete the bottom ones. Then add blocks to the side. Now for the angled support, we need to repeat this kind of process but build out and up, and delete the temporary supports. And in the center gaps, we will place the luminescent block to give a majestic look for our shrine, and to provide a bluish tint to our light that will blend nicely with the light provided by the altar. Tip number 19 is yet another tweak you can do with your roof designs to make them look more unique. We've already got our support frame that will make the underside of our roof look really cool. After placing outer roof corners all around and filling in the gaps with the roof side, we are left with an opening up top with our copper beam supports. Instead of capping it with something like the peak rooftop, there is no reason why we have to use roof pieces at all. Let's bring out some metal blocks and start filling it in. Instead of making it flat, place a block above the existing beam, move over one, and plop down another. Remove the first and build around. Repeat again for the top layer. And as we can see, the inside looks quite ornate and detailed. A little bit of contours can go a long way. Again, on the outside, to match the motif of our entrance, I'll continue using the half-timbered shapes to make single columns for that gothic look. And because I hate the floating bottom altar look, I'm going to crisscross some beams below there. I want to blend that all in together and make it look seamless. Using my earlier tips, I'll use different materials and create non-flat surfaces to make it look better. At this point, we've got 2 buildings. The entrance with the grappling hook anchor and the altar shrine. Because the shrine is wedged in between a couple trees and the entrance itself, space was tight, so I didn't want to put my main treehouse in that spot, nor did I want to have another heart attack moving the altar again. So I'll need to create a third suspended building. This time, I am thinking an even larger circle. To make sure it is aligned with my existing path, I will temporarily build out and place the start of the circle around here. Reason being, I want to pass the trees on either side so they won't be in my way for building. Tip number 20. Minimize the proximity of your structure to trees as much as possible, which is ironic given we are building a treehouse. Due to the nutty tree colliders, it has been painful up to this point to build through them. Furthermore, it prevents you from walking in that collider region, and I want to maximize my livable space. So the actual building will be out of the collider zone as much as possible. A good rule of thumb is to make your structure a bit farther away from the diameter of the tree base. Thus, I am trying to place this edge of the circle far enough away that will avoid these trees, but still be close enough to be a treehouse. So given all the trees around the area, this spot is fairly wide open, and I estimate I can make about a 44 block diameter circle in this space without seriously intersecting a tree. Hopefully we don't get too close, but I'll consult my handy chart and put down the blocks for a 44 diameter circle. Now, I highly recommend framing out the perimeter for large circles, especially as carving it out like I did with the small circle would be quite tedious in my opinion. This will allow you to easily count each section of blocks. Another useful tip when doing this, double check your work. Make a temporary line right across and make sure both sides match up. I actually am one block off, so I need to go back and figure out where my error is and correct it. Once completed, it looks something like this, pretty magnificent. Tip 23. When filling it in, for the love of God, manually fill in all the edges with single blocks. Last thing you want to do is use a 2 or 4 meter ceiling shape and wreck your perimeter. Fill in the middle parts using that, but not the edges. As we did with the altar shrine, I'll make some short copper walls along the tapered section of the circle. Unfortunately, I am a bit close to the tree in this section, which is causing the collider to interfere a bit with my building. Same deal here. Use the blueprints to get around that issue, though it will cut off some of my livable space, but I can live with a tiny amount of no walk zone. Next, I want to fill in the gaps of our wall with some refined wood blocks. For these wall sections, I'd like to put in wider windows. Both the window frame and its evolved cousin, the ornamented wooden window frame, occupy the same space, a 2 wide by 3 high region. Thus, if you want wider windows, make a hole multiple of 2. Here I'll do 2 4 wide by 3 high holes on each side of my circle. As we did with our entrance, I'm going to place some half-timbered columns to create some windows for our main treehouse structure. It will all tie in together and give each structure a common aesthetic. I've also decided I want my walls a bit higher, so I'm going to go all around the perimeter and increase the height of all my walls and columns. To create a nice contrast in the wood walls, I'm going to place a single layer border of half-timbered blocks all around the top. Another small detail you can do for your windows is to differentiate the bottom windowsill to a different material, here using the metal block again. And of course, you can also pop that out a bit by running an interior row of blocks across it, but that is optional. And even more optional is a full-on decorative window frame on the interior. You don't need to get super elaborate, but simple geometric shape can instantly elevate your interior design. Yet another alternative approach to window designs is to put a straight rooftop covering over the windows on the outside. However, if you want to trim it down, it can be a bit tricky to actually see the individual blocks. If you like the thickness, that is fine. You're done. But if you want a single block width covering, an easier way to do it is to actually use the single roof block. Place 2 blocks side by side. You want to place some blocks diagonally next, but placing the most immediate block causes a structure to form, blocking visibility. Instead, place the next diagonal block and then fill the space in between. A simpler, but still great looking alternative design to the angled roof beams we did earlier on the shrine are just a bunch of straight sloped beams. These are far easier to make, though the principle is the same. This time around, I'm going to go with a gentler slope. 2 for every 1 higher, and each time we go higher, we remove the block underneath. I'm going to go all around my circle and do this at symmetrical points. However, how many you do is up to you, but I don't want too many beams here. This also has the dual benefit of making it easier for building our roof. Time for the roof. So unfortunately, I haven't found a good way of doing a shallower sloped roof using the roof blocks. Among the roof blueprints, there's only a single slope option for all roof shapes, excluding the flat roof option. So to get around that limitation for now, we're going to eschew any roofing blocks altogether. Tip number 28. Instead, use any block type you want to create a step pyramid type of design. I'm going to go with the weathered stone block as I really like the look of it and gives it a lived-in feel. The supports we just created serve as a great way of guiding the building of our roof. No need to place any temporary blocks to later remove, as we have been doing that a lot. All of the metal blocks in place provide the backbone to build directly from to place our roof. After directly filling the roof over the beams directly, we have 4 corner gaps, which we can fill in just like we did with the corner staircase we made and got rid of soon after. Fill in the blocks till they meet in the corner, and then bam boom done. My next step is to implement several of the previous tips to add more detail to this current structure. A square beam along the top inner roof, Gothic decorative arch in the front using the half-timbered blocks with a different pattern than the entrance, a roof overhang that tapers the length to give a non-rectangular contour, some copper support beams, and the previously mentioned balcony with the tapered edges. Time to put in all the doors and windows. We'll be using the ornamented wooden window frame and the copper door. I'll go around and slot those into their respective positions. And of course the entrance, which has the worst tree collider problem is very difficult to position windows. Again, another reason to steer clear of being too close to trees. Hopefully that changes in the future, but for now you need to be cognizant of that issue. One last project I want to complete is a little area underneath the main floor of the large circular treehouse in which I can put my bed and my stuff. To construct this little space, I'll place stair pieces on either end to give an angled, non-boxy look. I'll enclose the space with some floors, walls with openings for windows, you know, the usual stuff. Stairs leading down into the bottom room are angled as I had shown previously using the same technique, except I left it attached to the stair blueprints I just placed on the one side. For our stairwell entrance, I will add some pizzazz by removing the wooden border around it and replacing with copper. I'll also enclose the one side of the stairs leading down to add a bit of privacy and some interesting contours around the bending staircase. Back up top, I'll put a railing all around, and finally, I'll add some bone wall blocks above each railing leg to add some chilly flair. Back on the outside, we'll add a copper border around the exterior to remove the dreaded flat surface. Another useful tip for decorating your interior is to not simply place down a fireplace and call it a day. Let's integrate it into the design of our build by laying down some roughly cut stone. The general idea is we want to place blocks around this item in such a way that it forms an elegant fireplace, leaving a gap for the fire, and let's mix in some bone block for an ornate look. Next, we can create a chimney extending from our fireplace all the way through the roof. Our last order of business is to plug up any remaining holes, and voila, finished product looks pretty good. And finally, a bonus tip. You can make a makeshift kitchen counters combining the sink and the cooking fireplace by laying down some stone, orienting both in whatever manner you prefer, and then surrounding them with some more stone. I'm not going too fancy here, but you can certainly use this idea combined with some cabinets and whatnot to make a really sharp kitchen area. If you'd like to see my take on more furniture ideas, I can definitely make a video on that topic if there's some interest in that. After completing the build, I'm pretty happy with the results. In hindsight, I ran out of some patience with the big circular structure to make it look like it's attached to the surrounding trees. At that point, I was getting fed up with the tree colliders. Building a treehouse in Enshrouded can definitely be a bit janky, but the end results are definitely beautiful in my opinion. Plenty of ways to creatively expand, and if playing with friends or on a dedicated server, everyone can basically expand via paths from tree to tree, or like I mentioned way at the beginning, use the swinging anchor to get around. I wanted more of a build, so I felt a bit cheating to eliminate all the ornate pathways in place of a swinging anchor. The trees definitely give a great ambiance to the build, and the branches and leaves protruding through the walls and ceiling give a very naturalistic look and are quite beautiful. All the tips I gave aside from the tree specific ones can be used in any type of build, so feel free to mix and match and swap out materials, do whatever you like. Sky's the limit. I normally don't like to place furniture and do interior decoration within my build videos, but I got a bit carried away here and had some fun. Plenty of living and storage space, and I managed to stuff in all the craftspeople on the main floor. I was originally thinking to split them up into different treehouse structures, but I don't think I have the patience to deal with the tree colliders again anytime soon. Down below, we have quite a cozy little room with our crafting bench, beds, and storage. I would highly recommend, if you aren't a huge building lover, you probably want to pass on a treehouse for now, as it definitely takes longer to build the structures suspended in the air. For those who love to build, I think it is worth the extra effort and a bit of migraine dealing with the tree colliders to make a truly majestic build. And like I said, you can totally use many of these tips in any build outside of treehouses. Hope you all took something beneficial away from this one, and if you did, please drop a comment below, hit that like button, and consider subscribing as it really helps us out a ton. I'd also like to thank our awesome Patreon community whose generosity is funneled continuously back into the channel. On that note, this is Eerie Knight signing off. See you all in the next one.